Lucifer, one of the most beautiful and powerful angels in the accounts of Abrahamic traditions, holds a fascinating and tragic role in celestial history. He was a being of light, revered for his wisdom and beauty, until something profound shifted in his heart: the desire to be like God. Ambition truly is a double-edged sword, isn't it? With it, he crossed the line between devotion and arrogance, choosing to rebel in pursuit of authority that wasn't his to hold. It's like a leader who, enchanted by power, ignores the perils of pride. Want an example? Imagine a sports star who believes himself invincible, only to lose everything in a hasty decision. This intense desire Lucifer carried led him to challenge divine order, an unimaginable act for a being created to serve. By refusing to accept his place, he demonstrated that even celestial beings, when gripped by vanity, can go astray. This reminds us that even the greatest among us can fall if they forget humility. How often do we see brilliant people lose their way by failing to recognize the limits of their abilities? Lucifer's story has much to teach us about respecting structures, even if they seem unfair. For he, an angel in a position of power, charted his own destiny by defying order. Lucifer's fall to earth was more than a supernatural event. It was a symbol of transformation and loss. He went from a glorious archangel to Satan, the adversary, carrying with him the consequences of his choices. It's like witnessing someone once admired become a source of fear. Lucifer represents those who, by crossing certain lines, sever from their own essence. Imagine a successful entrepreneur who, driven by greed, ends up ruining their reputation. In both cases, pride diverts them from what they might have been, and so it continues, for Lucifer was not alone in his fall. Along with him, 200 other angels also rebelled, forming an alliance that defied divine laws and initiated a cycle of consequences that forever marked humanity. This story takes on new dimensions as we look at this collective fall of angels. Lucifer may have started the rebellion, but he did not fall alone. At his side, 200 other angels joined forces, forming a dangerous alliance against divine commandments. Imagine the magnitude of it. It wasn't just an isolated act of defiance, it was an entire conspiracy, plotted to share forbidden knowledge and overstep sacred boundaries. The union of these angels, known as the Watchers, revealed a deep desire for power and freedom. It's like a group of colleagues who, in search of recognition and status, decide to act on their own, ignoring the consequences. These fallen angels, driven by their desire to interact more deeply with humanity, began to share knowledge that had been exclusively divine. Astrology, martial arts, even the secrets of metals and plants were revealed to humans. This was both a gift and a curse for mortals, as this wisdom, when misused, generated conflicts and imbalances. It's like a child receiving the keys to a car. Powerful knowledge without maturity can lead to disastrous results. What would become of humanity after the fall of these angels? But the ambition of the Watchers didn't stop there. They took human wives and produced hybrid descendants, the fearsome Nephilim. These giants, born of a forbidden union, were creatures of immense strength but also of violent and uncontrollable nature. Imagine beings of colossal size and insatiable hunger, devastating everything around them to satisfy their desires. This scenario resembles stories where unchecked power leads to chaos, like societies that lose balance in a relentless quest for resources. These Nephilim became a true nightmare for humanity, and the story only intensifies. The mass fall of the angels and the birth of the Nephilim were such an affront that the consequences could not go unnoticed. Now, it's time to understand how this profound impact made the Book of Enoch a key piece for understanding this narrative, even though it was excluded from most sacred scriptures. The Book of Enoch is like a hidden key to the forgotten mysteries about the fallen angels and the Nephilim. It contains details not found in more familiar texts, offering a glimpse into what happens when divine beings choose to stray from their mission. Imagine a work that explores the darker aspects of humanity and the divine, both ignored and revered. This book recounts the deeds of the 200 angels who shared their knowledge with humans, revealing how these gifts ended up corrupting the world. Think of it as a forbidden guide to hidden powers. Although the Book of Enoch was removed from the official canons in various religious traditions, its influence endures. It describes the Nephilim not only as violent giants but as predators who fed on both men and animals, presenting a terrifying portrait of a pre-flood era. This detail stirs the imagination, doesn't it? After all, it represents a struggle between the divine and the profane, with humanity caught in the chaos provoked by these beings. This powerful image of the Nephilim reminds us that knowledge doesn't always bring wisdom and can be a heavy burden to bear. The exclusion of the Book of Enoch from most Bibles only added to the mystery surrounding it. Yet certain churches retained the book in their biblical version, believing its accounts hold invaluable spiritual and moral value. For them, the Book of Enoch serves as a warning about the dangers of divine disobedience and uncontrolled power. Practically, this prompts us to reflect on the importance of boundaries in our own lives. Just as the angels fell by transgressing, many of us fall when we overstep limits in pursuit of the unattainable, and the Book of Enoch's narrative deepens from there, showing how heaven responded to this violation with a series of relentless punishments. These angels would not escape unscathed, and divine justice fell upon them in ways that marked all of spiritual history. Now, what did fate hold for these rebellious beings? The fallen angels didn't escape the consequences of their actions. On the contrary, divine punishment was severe and exemplary. Each of the rebels was consigned to a grim fate, forever removed from the celestial realm. Some were cast into deep abysses, where light would never reach them, while others were transformed into wandering spirits, destined to roam the earth as corrupted beings. These punishments reflect the weight of transgressions and show that power and knowledge, without obedience, ultimately lead to irreparable consequences. The idea that these angels were imprisoned in eternal darkness illustrates the seriousness with which disobedience is viewed in the celestial context. Imagine living in complete darkness, with no hope of redemption, only the memories of lost glory. This is a lesson that transcends the spiritual and applies to daily life. How many people have we seen lose everything by straying from their responsibilities or principles? These fallen angels became an example of what happens when one chooses the path of pride and disobedience. In addition to confinement, some angels began to roam the earth as demons, haunting humans and retaining a distorted essence of their angelic nature. This transformation is a reminder that by defying the divine, these beings lost their purity and were relegated to an existence without peace. It's as if they were shadows of their own being, living memories of a mistake that could never be undone. In our world, this kind of punishment is reflected in the permanent consequences of thoughtless choices that mark and often redefine us forever. But the story doesn't end here. These angels, even after their harsh penalties, left a bitter legacy of forbidden knowledge that would still impact humanity. And that's exactly what we will explore next: the impact of the Watchers' knowledge on the world of men. The Watchers not only rebelled, they also introduced human society to knowledge that was previously restricted to the divine. They taught about astrology, revealed the secrets of metalworking, the crafting of weapons, and even the use of cosmetics, bringing humanity skills with the potential to transform society, but also to corrupt it. Imagine the impact of such powerful knowledge being given without responsibility. It's like giving the keys to a laboratory to someone without training. The potential for transformation is immense, but so is the risk of chaos. Astrology, for example, allowed humans to observe and interpret the skies, leading to advances in understanding the cosmos and creating beliefs about fate and the power of the stars. But at the same time, this generated fascination and fear, becoming a tool of manipulation and even control. How often do we still see people today captivated by astrological predictions and influences? It's a knowledge that fascinates, but can easily lead away from spiritual essence, fostering dependence rather than freedom. The knowledge of weapons and metals brought another kind of transformation. By learning to forge tools of war, humans gained power in defense and conquest, but also opened the way to bloody and violent conflicts. These gifts given by the Watchers, from a celestial perspective, were like dangerous flames in untrained hands. Practically speaking, it's like offering advanced technology without guidance, an invitation to abuse power. This knowledge not only empowered but also exposed the darker sides of human societies, which turned to wars and internal disputes. And there was more. Teachings about cosmetics and beauty influenced human desires, especially among the women of that time. By manipulating their appearance, people moved away from their essence, creating illusions and distortions. Thus we see that the knowledge of the Watchers was not merely practical, it touched on the very sense of human identity and purpose. However, all these teachings, despite being fascinating, ultimately aroused divine wrath, leading to the decree of the flood. God's decision to send the flood was the culmination of his indignation with what the world had become, corrupted by forbidden knowledge and the presence of the Nephilim. The earth, once a reflection of divine order, had turned into chaos, and the flood would be the final solution to cleanse creation. Imagine the symbolism of a devastating storm, washing away all that represented disorder. This act of God was a firm declaration that when harmony is broken, nature rebels to restore balance. The flood was not just a punishment for the Nephilim and the Watchers, but also a new beginning for humanity. God chose Noah, a righteous man, to preserve life and ensure that after the chaos, a new era of hope and righteousness could flourish. It's like a reset, a new cycle where the mistakes of the past would serve as a reminder of what humanity should avoid. This narrative brings a powerful message about responsibility and renewal, as it's in moments of crisis that the greatest lessons are internalized. The duration of the flood, 40 days and 40 nights, carries profound meaning, representing the time needed for purification to be complete and evil to be eradicated. This number, often associated with periods of trial and preparation, highlights the impact of a transformation that is not quick but necessary. In our own lives, we sometimes go through storms that seem endless, but in essence, they serve to mold us and prepare us for a new phase. The flood, then, was not just destruction but a chance for a fresh start. After the waters receded, the earth was transformed, but the legacy of the Nephilim was not completely erased. Their souls, now separated from their bodies, continued to wander, becoming what we know today as demons. These desolate and ravenous spirits would go on to impact humanity, perpetuating a dark presence that constantly tested human faith and resilience. Even after the flood swept away the Nephilim, their spirits remained on earth, transforming into the demons that would come to haunt humanity. These entities, unable to find peace, wander in hunger, seeking to corrupt and mislead mankind. Thus, the presence of these demons becomes a constant test of people's faith and moral strength. It's like facing daily temptations that challenge our limits and convictions, making us question who we really are. This legacy is not just a legend, but a symbol of the internal battles that everyone faces. What makes these spirits so terrifying is the insatiable hunger they carry. Condemned to perpetual emptiness, they reflect what happens when desires and ambitions become our sole purpose. It's like someone who seeks power or wealth incessantly, but never feels satisfied. These demons remind us that without boundaries, desire can turn into an eternal prison. This is the price of an existence without purpose, where satisfaction is unreachable and peace unattainable. This image of demons is a metaphor for what happens when we allow our desires to control us. Even today, the idea of demons remains present in stories and culture, representing both external and internal forces that bring disorder. Ultimately, these narratives about demons speak to human struggles and choices, about what happens when we let ourselves be carried away by impulses beyond our control. How many times in our own lives have we faced these forces that seem to push us toward the wrong decisions? The legacy of demons is a reminder that evil can manifest in many forms, both internal and external, requiring constant vigilance and discipline. This constant struggle between good and evil, between control and surrender to desire, is what makes the story of these demons so relevant today. And looking at all this, we can't help but wonder, how far are we willing to go to preserve our integrity? These stories, so ancient and mysterious, bring to light the eternal human dilemma, making us reflect on our own inner struggle. And so, we arrive at a final reflection on the numerical and symbolic dimensions of these events. The presence of the Nephilim, described as giants around 450 feet tall, is impressive not only for their size but for what it represents. This detail suggests that they were more than simple hybrids. They were monsters of epic proportions that dominated the landscape and terrorized all around them. It's like imagining a giant standing out among mountains, a being whose mere presence inspired fear. This size, by itself, symbolizes how out of control the forces involved in the fall of the angels and the impacts of this celestial rebellion were. The image of these giants points to an era where power was completely unchecked. Another number that stands out is the 200 fallen angels, the Watchers. This number is not just a count. It represents the strength of a movement, a true angelic revolution. In a context where angels were known for their loyalty, imagining such a large number rebelling gives an idea of the magnitude of this conspiracy. It's the kind of number that makes us reflect on the collective impact of a wrong idea. These 200 angels chose to follow their own desires, creating a rift so great that its effect echoed through human and spiritual generations. The flood of 40 days and 40 nights was not a mere climatic event, but a milestone of purification and judgment. This period, recurring in various religious traditions, is associated with times of trial, renewal, and redemption. It represents the time needed for things to return to their pure state. This symbolism reminds us that sometimes we must go through periods of turbulence and isolation to be reborn stronger and improved. The number 40 evokes deep transformation and, like the flood, can be seen as an invitation to reflect on what needs to be renewed in our lives. These numbers reveal much more than simple counts. They are symbols of an era of excess and warnings that challenge humanity to learn from the past. From the size of the Nephilim, reminding us of the danger of unchecked powers, to the 200 angels and the 40 days of the flood, each has a message for reflection.